Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is our async training around issue refinement for the verify stage. I'll be kicking us off today, walking through the presentation. There's a doc for questions, but feel free to just jump in and ask any questions as we go through the doc. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and present. All right, so today we're talking about issue refinement for async communication. This is something that we use within the testing group in Verify, so something near and dear to my heart. So we have some best practices for utilizing issues as you're doing your refinement. We do use issues as a method for organizing our product proposals, process improvements, and some other things around process and product ideas that we have. It's really everyone's responsibility to keep that issue as our single source of truth. Things really fall apart quickly if that issue is not up to date. The proposal having to follow through threads through an issue or sometimes across multiple issues is just a really bad experience for everyone, especially folks outside of GitLab who are also using our issues and contributing to the discussion. And it's not just on the PM, the EM, and the product designer. It's really everybody involved in the conversation to contribute back into the proposal or updating, refining on the problem that we're solving, if it's a feature proposal, and keeping that issue as the single source of truth. We can really make use of the blocks, blocked, and relates relationships between issues to show how things need to line up, where we can't make progress on something because something else is blocking it, and then maybe we can contribute to that issue. I will warn you to be careful about making loops of those, though. I've run into that occasionally. Circular dependencies are problematic sometimes with the blocks, and it can take a while to untangle that. Usually because the issue doesn't have a single source of truth or the proposal isn't updated about what actually needs to happen. So those two things work together really nicely or sometimes can bite you. In the handbook, we have some guidance about closing an issue, making sure that it's updated with a comment about what the resolution was so that folks are following along. Especially external folks aren't in our Slack, and Slack messages go away. They're ephemeral. So let's make sure that we keep those issues up to date about why it was closed so that we're keeping our promises and we don't try to make external promises without that internal agreement. So try to be proactive about that, of updating why that issue has been closed, what the resolution was. Moving on, discussion and issues and merge requests is definitely preferred over Slack. I know with our team, we have folks spread out all over, and it's just a lot easier to try to have that conversation within the issue. You can use links to documents or other issues there just as easily as you can in Slack. It makes it a more inclusive environment for us so that we're spread out all over. And you're not expected to be available all the time. That's just a tenet of async communication. We know that we shouldn't expect instantaneous responses there. So it's kind of setting it off and expecting at some point in the future that that will be answered back. We are striving to work as part of a community when we're weighing issues, we're refining issues. We try to do that in advance so that we can enable contributions. Community contributions help drive the product forward, but without clear expectations about what the problem is, how we're going to solve the solution, how it fits in with the rest of the feature set in GitLab, it's really hard for the community, the wider community, to help contribute to GitLab as a whole. And definitely leverage those issue templates. I don't know the last time I created an issue without a template, at least as part of the main GitLab project, that really help with thinking through all of the steps of a feature proposal or even a process change. And it helps make sure that they're all really consistent and reproducible so that everybody's having the same experience as they're reading through issues. They know what to expect and they know where they can contribute because they've seen that kind of content in other issues. So while they may have some expertise or not have expertise, they can fill it in one area, they can fill it in another and help contribute to that conversation and move the issue forward. All right, and just some examples of issue update scenarios. Comments are made about designs and technical proposals change. The engineering manager is going to be the one who's going to update that technical proposal section. They might get a tag in from one of their engineers, or the product manager might, as the design is updated, tag that EM to say, hey, new design, new considerations, can you update the proposal accordingly? Now, all of that happens really nicely async within the issue. An issue is submitted by an account manager, and a front-end engineer suggests creating an epic, adding back-end engineering scope. The product manager might create that epic. The front-end engineer can then refine the issue for the front-end scope, create a placeholder issue for the back-end issue, ping the EM to coordinate support. Product manager can then start moving those issues into planning breakdown, adding needs weight labels, or however your team is managing that workflow, so that there's triage and the proposal gets updated and a weight applied, so the team can consider that as part of their future planning. And lastly, during implementation mid-milestone, a piece of scope is removed due to unknown based on maintainer review. Engineer is going to update the issue description with the implementation proposal based on what will be implemented. Often there's a follow-up issue that goes with that. That's a method that our team has used in testing, where if something comes out of the merge request review, we're going to have a follow-on issue. We tag it with follow-up, link it back so it relates back to the initial issue so that we know those things are connected, and that's a feature enhancement or feature maintenance that we want to tackle later. So those are just a few issues, or a few examples rather, of some issue update scenarios of keeping that issue as the single source of truth, keeping the discussion within the issue, and using labels to help with workflow and asynchronous communication so that everyone has the shared context about what that issue is about. So as always, I blaze through content pretty quick, but I want to open it up to questions, and we'll click back into the doc and see what we have so far. Nothing. Jackie's.
While you're pulling that up, James.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that
while
your presentation was so awesome, and my presentation of your presentation was so great. No one has any questions about the content this morning.
Yeah, I think one thing to frame up is the value of using issues helps us communicate to customers, external parties, and again, that community engagement. I also want to lean on some other piece of the handbook where it's the responsibility of the entire team to keep issue descriptions up to date, not just the PM, the EM, or the designer. So as you start to see scope change, especially as you are updating issues as an engineering partner, we're all accountable to keeping the single source of truth updated and transparent, rather than relying on just the product manager or the EM to transcribe those decisions back up to the issue description.
I might have a question regarding like issue refinement. So sometimes when it's like a complex technical issue or a complex problem to solve, sometimes you have to set up like a sync meeting to discuss it. In your experience, like what's the best way to kind of say what you discussed during the meeting and the outcome of that meeting? Like, yes, the outcome of the meeting should be updating the issue, but like, do you like post the agenda of what we discussed, like since like the meeting is like ephemera, like a Slack message in that sense, like what's the best way to kind of keep record of that?
The way that we've approached that in testing is usually you want to go into that meeting with you want to go into that meeting with some sort of an agenda, and usually that's here are some questions that we need to answer. So we might frame that up as a comment, or even within the proposal of we met on this date. Here are the questions that we tried to answer. Here was the outcomes of those. That might result in an update to the issue proposal because some bits of that were decided or answered synchronously, or follow-on issues as well, where there's still refinement that is needed, and that'll be reflected back within. So it's a summary of that conversation, and it's incumbent on the team to have that agenda, keep those notes. They can reference back to that and link to it as well, so you have that artifact that you can bring back in. But ultimately, once you answer those questions, then these should be reflected back in the proposal in the issue itself.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also added one thing we've done in pipeline authoring. When we went into this situation, if possible, we've recorded also the meeting and then posted in the issue. So anyone that is interested in seeing or hearing what really happened in that meeting, not only on the notes, can have this artifact available at his disposal or her disposal.
Yeah, that's using recording the video, posting it to unfiltered and linking back is another great way. I think that's a great add-on to making sure that also the asynchronous piece is captured as well, but it does add a lot of context for folks if they want to follow along.
It's definitely an add-on. Like, I think what's must is like making sure that the agenda is up to date with notes and the summary is reflected on the issue description. But then, as I mentioned, and if possible, also add the recording because it helps sometimes. I know it helped me a lot.
Something I don't see mentioned in this is the problem of issue inflation. It's something we had to deal with on PA, where we ended up having so many issues that it was like impossible to have the conversation, or very difficult to have the conversation, because you'd say, oh, we said this thing in place X, but where is place X? And like, if you're not assigned to the issue, they can be very difficult to find. And so we sort of came up with a sort of like discussion implementation issue breakdown that I think is working well for us. But I just wanted to mention it because I didn't see it noted here. But like, it's very easy for issues to spin so far out of control that like they're not helpful anymore.
So Sarah, is that there were so many comments within the issue, or so many issues themselves that the discussion was spread across? I didn't quite follow the problem.
So many issues themselves. Well, it's both. It's that there can be a lot of issues, and so they get spread across all the issues when things are actually related. So some of it is, you know, trying to keep discussion in one place. But then that means that once you get to the point that you're implementing something as an engineer, you know, you can have these issues that are so big again. And so it's nice to basically be like, this is the discussion issue. We're going to go back and forth and do all the things. And then when we know what we're going to implement, this is our implementation issue where we've transferred the proposal to that issue. And now this is the issue that's going to be moved through the various workflows, et cetera, and like is the decided one.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. I've been part of those really long threads, and it can take a long time to get caught up. A couple of things that I've used is halt the discussion in a thread and start a new one with a summary. And then you can link back to a thread or a couple of threads even of discussion if someone wants the full context and to read through it themselves. But I find, especially if I have to reread an entire 3-month thread 3 times, like because I'm revisiting the issue to get the context, it's time to sum it up somewhere of here are still the open questions, here's what's been decided so far. I've done that in threads, and I've done that in issue descriptions as well to kind of sum up where we're at in the conversation. I'd be interested to see, has pipeline authoring documented that in your team handbook page?
Yes, it is. I can track.
Great to get a link to that so we can share it out more broadly. I'd be really interested to see how that's going for you.
Thank you, James, so much for walking through this training. Really appreciate it.
In my discussions with other product folks around town and just in the industry in general, it's a common problem of how do you keep track of all of the conversation within issues and proposals. And everyone kind of sees our method of asynchronous communication as a revelation of doing it, as opposed to having continual meetings and meeting notes and things getting lost in Google Documents. So I love the way that we communicate asynchronously, even when folks are fairly bunched up in time zones and can have those synchronous discussions. I kind of prefer that async communication method. Thanks for linking that in, Dove. Right. Any other questions, any other discussion topics that we want to jump into, or go back to slides that I skimmed over too quickly? I think the deck is shared, so you can jump in there as well.
In the deck, I see like point number 6, it says we strive to work as a part of the community, and that the weighing of issues and refining should happen in advance so that there could be community participation. I wonder how much of that is like happening today, because like, do we leave enough room for community to come and participate in something, or does it happen too fast to work like as a productive, very efficient team? So
I thi-
should we consciously try to do something to kind of increase engagement on the issues?
So in pipeline execution, Vituka, we had to kind of get ahead of it a little bit by weighing the issues and actually creating a backlog and then labeling them onboarding. I think there's other teams, like I know Release and Package, who actively do office hours. I've seen the runner engage the community with the runner team engage the community team with office hours. So I think that there's pockets of the Verify stage that are actively engaging the community and getting them up to speed on their scope. Earlier with the hackathon, we've done like forward-looking vision reviews to enable the community to contribute freely to the issues that are labeled accepting merge requests and onboarding. So I think that there is some activities across the entire Verify stage in pockets, but there's definitely things that different teams can be doing to make sure that the contribution flow is okay. Because, for example, some teams get really hit hard with merge request reviews, and that's not, we can't always keep up with that. So there's some considerations with that enablement.
Okay, thanks, Jackie.
Yeah, and I would add on there that it's about the issues are weighted and refined in advance of the current milestone. So it's the things that the team is working on. Those have a solid proposal. Those have a solid weight on them that everyone knows what needs to be implemented. I think that there's really great community contribution as we're refining proposals and scoping down issues and problems to solve into potential features. And we get a lot of great participation there. But ensuring that something is, I always call it shovel ready. Somebody can pick it up, they know exactly what they need to do with it and move forward. Still with the latitude as an engineer to make some decisions. I think we want to have the things that are going into the next milestone at that point so that they're ready to go. And if we get community contribution there, so much the better. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, James.
All right. Well, seeing no more questions or comments in the doc, and nothing in chat, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for the great discussion. Appreciate it. And if you have questions later, there's a couple of threads going in Verify. Jackie and I are in the Verify channel in Slack. Definitely can answer those there or asynchronously some other way. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.